Hey everybody, I'm Matt Williamson and this is Pop Goes the 60s, and today I wanted to do something for the Christmas season. I'm a big old film buff and I've got a good collection of old Christmas movies I've been watching for years, and since it's the season I thought I'd share those with you. I consider this old period, it's roughly late 30s to about 1960 roughly, and all these movies fall into that category, into that time period. And let's go through them here. There's a bunch. So I'm going to start with some movies that aren't exactly, some of these aren't full-fledged Christmas movies, but Christmas is happening in and around the film. So the first one I'd like to bring up is The Apartment, Billy Wilder. So this is Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine, Fred MacMurray. The famous story of a guy who has to loan out his apartment key at work to advance. And this takes place roughly between right around Christmas through New Year's. So there's Christmas parties at the office, which in those days were pretty wild. So that part of it's a lot of fun. Similarly, another one that takes place around Christmas is Desk Set, Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn. Another office building Christmas scenario where there's a party there, champagne is flowing, and the good old days. So this is one of the later pictures they made together, and it's a very cute movie. Okay, here's one you might not think is a Christmas movie, because it's really not, but it ends at Christmas. It's Fair to Remember, Cary Grant and Deborah Carr, the very famous love story. Now here's one that I more recently got into, and that's Meet Me in St. Louis. And this is the story of the World's Fair of 1904. And they go through the entire year. So there's the Christmas period, and that's where Judy Garland sings Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And this film is what made that song a big hit. And this film is, as far as Technicolor goes, it doesn't get more colorful than this. And Garland, it looks beautiful in it and sings wonderfully. Here's another kind of fringe Christmas movie that I like a lot. We used to show this in my family all the time growing up, and that's Pocket Full of Miracles, Betty Davis and Glenn Ford. Now it takes place over the Christmas holiday, and some of the music is Christmassy, that they use the Nutcracker Suite. And it's a great story of a little old apple lady that a gangster uses her apples for luck. And it's a Frank Capra story, so that makes it even more Christmassier. Okay. Next stack here. You're probably familiar with O. Henry's Gift to the Magi. Well, that's a short story. I won't go into it because if I tell any of it, it'll give it away. But O. Henry wrote several short stories, and this movie called O. Henry's Full House gives you 4 different stories, of which Gift to the Magi is one. And that's starring Farley Granger and Jean Crane. Okay, another one you probably know is Christmas in Connecticut. This is Barbara Stanwyck, Dennis Morgan, Sidney Greenstreet, 1945. And this was remade, I think, in the 80s with Chris Christopherson, which was pretty popular. I think that was for television. This movie, it's fun. It's a fun comedic romp. Nothing too earth-shattering. I love Sidney Greenstreet the most in this film, but it's one of those that it's nice to have on in the background when you're wrapping presents. Speaking of Barbara Stanwyck, we're going to go back to 1940 with this one called Remember the Night, also with Fred MacMurray, who is in The Apartment. Now, this movie is not very well known, but it's an excellent Christmas movie. And the story goes, Barbara Stanwyck is in Manhattan. She steals this expensive ring in a shop. And she gets busted, and Fred MacMurray is the assistant DA. Well, one thing leads to another. It's Christmas Eve, and she ends up going into his custody because he didn't want her to spend the night in jail, even though he intends on persecuting her. But he's going to his mother's place, that he's driving to Indiana. So together they drive there, and you might guess what happens along the way. Beautiful ending, a little bit of a different ending, a little bit sad, but still poignant. Okay, It Happened on Fifth Avenue. This is one I remember from my childhood, starring Don Defore, Gail Storm, Charlie Ruggles. The story of a bum who inhabits a rich person's home in New York on Fifth Avenue when he's vacationing down south in the wintertime. And all these people get collected and start living with him there. One of which is the original owner of the house, the rich guy, who poses as a bum. So it's a little convoluted, it's fun, anything with Don Defore is funny. So that's one you might want to check out. It happened on Fifth Avenue. You have a sip here. A little Christmas cheer. Holiday Affair. Janet Leigh, Wendell Corey, Robert Mitchum. So this is a story of a widow whose husband died in World War II, and she's got a young son she's raising. And she just can't seem to find the right guy to replace the father. Wendell Corey isn't the guy. He's a lawyer, very successful, loves them both. But then Robert Mitchum comes on the scene, and that changes everything. Very different dynamic, and there's kind of a rivalry between the two. And it's more of the kid plays a pretty big role in this. So if you've got kids, this might be a good one for that. Okay, we got two movies here that are related. One is The Shop Around the Corner, Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan. Now, this is the story of two people who work. This is actually set, I think, in Budapest. Why, I don't know. I guess that's the original story was written there for that. But the two people that work together, these two, cannot stand each other. But they're writing, there's these pen pals with these kind of ads in the paper to find romance. And here they don't know, but they're writing to one another. So it's a very nice story. It was remade much later as You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, I believe. Now, it was also remade, this was 1940. It was also remade in 1949 in a movie called In the Good Old Summertime. This is a Judy Garland, Van Johnson movie. It's a musical. And this one I would say is the better of the two. Judy Garland sings a couple Christmas songs, Technicolor, a little more heartfelt, but this is set turn of the century in Chicago, and they work in a music store, which is kind of cool. All right. Moving along here. Now, 1942, the biggest hit single was released, and that's White Christmas. No other song has sold more than that record, and this movie is what launched it, starring Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, and Marjorie Reynolds. And it's just a fun story, very Hollywood, the rivalry between these two guys, the dancer, the singer, and Bing Crosby is sick of working in the show business world. He doesn't want to work every day of the year. He just wants to work on holidays, which is only 14, so it opens this inn called Holiday Inn. So there's songs all through the year, and the Christmas part is the biggest part because it focuses on the song White Christmas. Now, Bing Crosby, it was such a big hit that he's synonymous with Christmas. So they developed a vehicle for him in 1944 as the character of Father O'Malley. And that's who he appears as in Going My Way. And in this movie, he's a priest. He's in New York. He comes to help an old parish. And this takes place over Christmas as well. And he sings several Christmas songs like Silent Night and O Come All Ye Faithful. So this has always been a perennial Christmas favorite. And it was such a huge hit, they did a sequel the following year in 1945 called The Bells of St. Mary's, teaming him with Ingrid Bergman. Now, this one doesn't have as heavy of a Christmas theme, but this was released in December of 1945 and was a huge hit. He does sing a couple Christmas songs. There's a Christmas pageant in it. So this also is connected with Christmas. And then finally, White Christmas, 1954. So this film was basically to capitalize on the hit song. It took many years to get this thing shot, but it was finally done in this lavish musical, lots of Technicolor, starring Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, Vera Ellen, and Rosemary Clooney. And if you like musicals, if you don't like musicals, you might like this one. It's just good fun. And of course, it's centered around the song White Christmas and a couple other excellent songs. Here's another one you may not have heard of. It's called I'll Be Seeing You. This stars Ginger Rogers and Joseph Cotten. Now, Ginger Rogers is coming home for Christmas to Midtown, USA. She is in jail for manslaughter, and she gets a leave to come home for like 8 days or a week or something. And Joseph Cotten's on the same train, and he is a ex-soldier, World War II, with some shell shock. So he kind of falls for her on the train, and he gets off at her stop lying that he's going to see his sister. and they start this kind of romance, although Ginger Rogers doesn't tell him why she's in jail. And it's kind of an interesting story how she winds up in jail too. But Shirley Temple also stars in this, and she's a teenage Shirley Temple, so she's not the little kid anymore. But this is a good movie. If you haven't seen it, get your hands on it. It's one to maybe add to your arsenal. One of the favorites of mine, Cary Grant, Loretta Young, The Bishop's Wife, 1947. So this also stars David Niven, and it's a story of an angel coming down to help a bishop who's trying to raise this cathedral, and he's having all kinds of problems. And it really ends up being less about the cathedral, but more about helping people. And it's also set at Christmas, and they're buying Christmas trees. And it's a beautifully done movie, and it's always been one of my favorites. This is the one I watch right at the day after Thanksgiving, and that is Miracle on 34th Street, starring Edmund Gwynn and a young Natalie Wood. And I'm sure everybody knows the story. Macy's Day Parade on downtown in New York. The woman who runs the parade is Natalie Wood's mother. So they have to hire a Santa Claus, and this leads one thing to another, and it winds up in court. Is he really Santa Claus? So it's a great, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, but it's still one of my favorites, and it still makes me smile. All right, we've got It's a Wonderful Life. Now, this film, starring Jimmy Stewart, has become kind of the favorite over the last, starting in the 80s. It became the show that was shown on cable nonstop. It became a very popular Christmas movie. The Christmas theme isn't super heavy, though it begins at Christmas and is told in a flashback and ends at Christmas. Very heartfelt, and it's about, I guess, the good of humanity and not so much the commercial. So this is a great one that I still save more toward closer to Christmas because I love it so much. Okay, you're probably asking me, well, Matt, what's your favorite Christmas movie? I'm going to go with A Christmas Carol starring Astaire Sim, 1951. I don't think you can get, there's been a story that's better written than Dickens' story, A Christmas Carol. And I'm sure many of you know the story. The three Christmas spirits that come to haunt Ebenezer Scrooge, who's his miser and hoards his money. But this particular version in 1951, I've probably not seen, this is probably the movie I've watched the most in my life. And the reason it's so good is that they use the top stage actors from in London. And although the production, it's a British-made film, so the production's a little shaky, but that doesn't overshadow the acting. So some great actors in here, including, I mentioned Astaire Sim as Scrooge, Mervyn Johns, a famous scene stealer, a very young Patrick McNee playing young Jacob Marley. So it's very short, it's maybe 70-some minutes, but worth every minute. All right, so that is my favorite. So I've got a couple others I want to show you here. Here's another favorite of mine I just love watching. It's called Holiday. Now this takes place just after Christmas to New Year's. And Cary Grant meets a young woman in Lake Placid. They have a whirlwind relationship and they're going to get married. And they come home and he finds out that she's super wealthy. And her sister is Katherine Hepburn. So Cary Grant is the young idealist. He's about to marry into this big, huge family, kind of a banking family that has their own ideals that differ from his. And it's just a wonderfully done movie. This is 1938. So for 1938, it's rather, it feels like an early 40s movie. But it's what I would highly recommend if you haven't seen it. And if, after that Christmas, you're resting the days after Christmas, this might be one to put on. All right, I've got a couple other movies here that are a little more fringe that I'm going to throw at you here that either have some Christmas songs in them or a slight Christmas theme. One would be On Moonlight Bay. This is starring Doris Day. That covers a Christmas period. Come to the Stable, Loretta Young, Celeste Holm. This is the story of two nuns. This is in wintertime, so there's lots of snow. They're in a fictional town in Maine called Bethlehem, and they're trying to build a hospital, a children's hospital. And it's a nice, very nice story, and not a heavy Christmas theme, but you know, the whole motif is kind of coming to a stable, so it's got this Christmas, nativity type of background. So this is one that I grew up watching a lot in my family. Speaking of biblical themes, Three Godfathers is another. So this is starring John Wayne, and it's three bank robbers who get tangled up and a woman gets killed. And they agree, they give their word to take care of her infant. So in doing so, they are probably going to get caught because they want to keep their word to this dying woman. So it's kind of a takeoff on the Three Wise Men. So that's Three Godfathers. Here's one that I've only seen once. My friend Amy, it's a favorite of hers, and she just mentioned it to me recently, so I just bought this. I haven't opened it yet. It's about three guys who are alone on Christmas Eve, and they invite up some people, and they try to play matchmaker between these two people, a man and a woman. And the three guys end up dying in a plane crash, and they come back as kind of ghosts to try to still get them together. So it's this fantasy, but it's kind of cute. Now here's one maybe you haven't heard of, Christmas Holiday. This is a film noir starring Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly as the bad guy. And he's a real bad guy. So this has got a Christmas motif. It's not very Christmassy, but it's one I picked up because I'm a film noir fan, and I don't watch this one too often. And finally, probably the least Christmassy of all, Night of the Hunter. I'm not going to give you too much background in this movie. It's kind of a fantasy horror movie. It's a great movie. Robert Mitchum plays a great bad guy, but the end of the movie, it ends at Christmas time. So it's kind of a very interesting way to end this film. Bogey, get up there. All right. So I've got a list of a few others that I don't have here. Starting in 1934, there's one Shirley Temple movie called Bright Eyes. Also in 34, The Thin Man. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but apparently that takes place at Christmas. 1939, Bachelor Mother, starring Ginger Rogers and David Niven. 1942, The Man Who Came to Dinner. That's Betty Davis and Monty Woolley. Jimmy Durante has a great scene in that one. 1947, Christmas Eve. That's starring Randolph Scott. I hated that movie. I just hated it. 1949, Little Women. 1951, The Lemon Drop Kid. That's Bob Hope. That's a musical, I believe. I've never seen it, but that's the movie that launched the song Silver Bells. That's 1951. 1954, Young at Heart. It's a musical starring Doris Day, Frank Sinatra, Dorothy Malone. And 1955, we have Bogart in We're No Angels. Not the best movie, but it's got Bogey in it. So there is a long list of old Christmas movies for you to dig into if you're looking for something to watch this Christmas holiday. I'm sorry, I wish I would have got this out sooner, a month sooner, but I do have a 15% off promotion going on all my merchandise. And like I said, it should have been done a month ago, but what I'm going to do is extend it till the end of January, so you'll have plenty of time to get some of the merchandise at Pop Goes the 60s. Also, some years ago when I first started this channel, I did on my podcast, I have got a 1960s Christmas special. So it's a podcast playing all kinds of 60s music that are Christmas themes, and it ends with a Beatles collection or like a Beatles montage of the best bits of all their Christmas flexies. So that's kind of a fun thing that I did that I wanted to share with everybody. So there you have it. I'm going to let you guys get back to decorating your tree and having a Tom and Jerry, and I hope to see you real soon. Merry Christmas, everybody, and thank you for supporting Pop Goes the 60s.
Snow, 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 snow. It won't be long.